Hello, everybody, and welcome to the pilot episode of Two Geeks and One Noob. I am Dan Jakewith, and I will let my co-conspirators introduce themselves.
I'm Caleb Chadwick.
I'm David Dean.
Well, hello, guys. So what our purpose here is to gather friends of similar interests, and maybe not so similar, and discuss, joke, learn more about, and generally have fun with geek culture. So today, like I said, I have my two friends with me. We're talking about Spider-Man.
Yes, I am so excited here.
Me too.
Mixed reactions.
Yeah, like I said, maybe not quite so similar interests, but we've got a lot of things we can talk about with Spider-Man. I mean, there's comics, there's TV, there's there's the original trilogy,
The memes.
the memes.
So many memes.
So,
And I will
I'm pointing at you.
I will preface this by saying that none of us have seen the new movie yet, so there will not be any spoilers in this portion. Once we've seen the movie, we will let you know if there are going to be any spoilers, but as of now, none of us have seen it. It's just going to be discussing general conversation and
lives.
yeah, and any potential things that we might want to see or hoping to see.
Yes, I very much agree. Thank you for that, Caleb.
Yep.
Very good point. I know there's quite a few things that I'm excited to see just in the trailers that I'm like, ooh,
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Admittedly, for me, there's not a lot of Marvel trailers that get me really excited these days, but this one, like, as soon as I saw it, it was just, I got lockjaw. My jaw hit the floor so hard. I am so ready for this movie.
I think that moment for me came at the end credit scene from Let There Be Carnage.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
That scene, oh man, I was so excited. I was geeking out. I was like one of two people still in the theater. I was so excited when I saw that.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the trailer for the new Into the Spider-Verse as well?
Yes. If it's even half as good as the first one, I'm
Yep.
so down for it.
Yeah.
I will. Okay, I am not a big Spider-Man fan, but the first Into the Spider-Verse was awesome. Love the art style, the general premise of introducing the wider audience to the multiverse idea.
Yes, absolutely.
I was a little iffy going into the first Spider-Verse because I wasn't a fan of the animation. And so initially I was just going in with pretty low expectations, admittedly. But as soon as I started watching it, I grew accustomed to the animation very quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately just fell for that movie. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. I love these characters. I love the story they told. I love the way they brought everything together. Like, it was just done so well.
Yeah,
Keep going.
I was in the same boat as you, Caleb, with Into the Spider-Verse, because I wasn't a huge fan of the art style either. But then I saw it and I was just like, my goodness, that was actually very well done.
I've seen so many anime that have tried to do that like 3D-esque animation going into it, and it just wasn't accomplished, and they really didn't get the goal, and it just felt like there was just a blur effect and not really the true 3D effect that they were trying to go for. And so that was my whole hesitation. As soon as I saw that movie, I was like, oh,
They can
well,
do
Marvel
it.
gets it. Of course they get it. They've got the money to get it. So,
Yeah.
like, they took
It's
care
Marvel. Of course it is.
Well, even then, that was still contested. That was more an art direction from Sony, I thought.
of it. Yeah, that's true.
I honestly did not know that. So, although I should have, because it is a Sony product. But
Yeah.
But okay, so I actually have one quick question for David before we get into the next bit here. Why don't you like Spider-Man? How can you not like Spider-Man? He is one of the best Marvel characters ever.
He's a great character. For me, part of it, it's a very small part of it is just we've seen so many repetitions, and granted, from what little I know of this new one, that kind of comes to fruition on why, or at least it's excusing it in a way that is viable to the plot.
Yeah.
But it's honestly just personal relations to it, where it's like, oh god, not again.
It was like, I definitely felt a little bit of that same hesitation initially when they announced this movie and talking about how many villains are going to be in there, because up to this point, anytime they've added more than one or two villains into a single Spider-Man movie, that's when things started to get really convoluted.
Mm.
And the only reason I wasn't as skeptical going into it is because we saw how many characters were in Endgame. It's like, okay, if they can manage a movie with that many characters and it doesn't feel like any of those characters are just lost, at least to me, then I'm less hesitant to see the number of villains we're going to have in this one. But like for Spider-Man 3, for example, as entertaining as it can be and the fantastic memes we got from that, the number of villains really hurt that movie.
Mm.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, including Bully Maguire.
Yeah. Emo Maguire is fantastic. That is where the memes come from.
Yeah.
I will die on this hill that Emo Maguire is great.
And nobody else can see, but I am giving Caleb finger guns right now.
Yeah. So, okay, real quick then. Caleb, what was the first, if you can remember, what was the first thing about Spider-Man himself that got you interested in the character?
For me, it was growing up with the 90s cartoon that I think all three of us grew up with. It was just so good getting to see so many various characters from the comic books and seeing that Spider-Man character really developed in a way that I personally hadn't seen up to that point. Granted, I was born in 1990, so of course I hadn't seen anything up to that point. But just seeing the way that the characters developed and that interaction between all of the characters and seeing like the various storylines, like the storyline that stands out to me the most in the old 90s cartoon is the one where Spider-Man turned into the giant human spider and the Punisher shows up hunting him down. Like, I will always remember that because it was one of the few multi-episode storylines they did at the time.
Yeah.
And so that was really where the love of Spider-Man started for me. Mm-hmm. And it's just kept going ever since.
Yeah, definitely. Very similar for me is the 90s cartoon was definitely what started it. Watching it on Saturday morning, that and X-Men.
Yes. X-Men and the animated Batman.
Yep. Yeah.
Like I grew up with.
We can't mix Marvel and DC here, guys.
We can't. I had to throw out.
DC is so much better.
I couldn't not mention animated cartoons we grew up with and not at least say like, hey, Batman was still a thing.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, I love both Marvel and DC, so you can't blame me for saying it here.
And I'm just a troll, so I'm gonna take that bait anytime.
Yeah. So I have to say though, for me though, like it was definitely the 90s cartoon. It was amazing. It was the Amazing Spider-Man. But the funny thing is actually what really got me into Spider-Man is after the 90s show ended, my mom used to take me shopping with her. And she would actually buy me a Spider-Man comic book every week.
Nice.
So it was like that one treat thing of like, I fell in love with Spider-Man. It was just like, these are awesome comic books.
Mm-hmm. So the Spider-Man comic books have been some of the ones that have been the most consistent.
Yeah.
As we've grown up, I would say. Because even looking back like to the early 2000s, there's still some storylines that stand out. And I remember for me, the first real full comic book series I got was X-Men versus Avengers, and the portion where Spider-Man got to really show what he can do in that, I was just like, oh my gosh, who is this character? He's so great.
Yeah.
See, this is one area where you guys far trounce me on this, because I did not grow up reading comics.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did read a lot of comic books. Funny thing is I probably don't remember a lot of them, just because, you know, I was younger and I have a terrible memory. But
I had very limited access to comic books growing up because my parents weren't comic book readers. I didn't have any friends that were really comic book readers, so I didn't really get to read them. Definitely didn't have the
definitely
app.
didn't have the app.
If you had told little 9-year-old me that there was going to be a phone that I could do literally everything on by the time I was an adult, I would not have believed you.
That was like the Star Trek,
right? Good self-censor there. Yeah. I like it.
Beep.
The comic books that I did get to grow up reading was Transformers, because there was a little like shop right down the road from my house growing up, and those were the only comic books that they had there. And so like I picked up the few that they had, and I read through them constantly, and I still have a few of them now, and they're just like so Transformers is very special to me, but I didn't get to really read and dive into the Spider-Man comics portion until I was an adult already.
Yeah, it was definitely, I was in my later teens when this kind of thing was happening for me too. So I didn't, like, my brother was quite a bit older than me, so I had access to a bunch of like X-Men comic books and stuff, and very few Spider-Man ones. But yeah, so that was kind of my little Spider-Man story.
I mean, yeah, I feel obligated now, but I mean, yeah, caught a couple episodes of the original series. It was fun. Never really followed it long enough to actually pick up on any of the more coherent storylines. But just to give an idea of the household I grew up in, the idea of comics is what you read in that 2 pages in the middle of the Sunday paper. In fact, to this day, I still have family who gripes about the various versions of Spider-Man, thinking, "Oh, this is nothing like the Sunday morning version." And I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, if that's your only scope, then why the heck are you saying anything? But
See, the funny thing about that is that I actually got super excited when I found out that Spider-Man was in the paper.
Yeah.
I was like, what? What the heck?
Yeah, I had no idea because we never got a paper growing up, and so when I found out that
We didn't
Spider-Man
either.
was in there, I was like, "Oh,
we didn't either. My grandparents just brought over the comics for us every Sunday.
Yep.
there you go."
The actual colored ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So David, do you have any questions about Spider-Man?
Yeah. How many versions of Spider-Man are there actually?
There's a lot. Like, we've seen the versions that they showed off in Spider-Verse, and that's just kind of scratching the surface, honestly. Like, there's so many other versions that they didn't really get to play around with and just really dive into it. Really, actually, the animated cartoon from the 90s was actually one that showed off a good chunk of the number of Spider-Mans that we had, because there was, like, I think close to 10 of them at one point. They showed off
Something
several.
like that, yeah.
So, and there were actually a lot of different versions than the ones that we got to see in Into the Spider-Verse. So,
Right, because in that one is only what, 5, 6?
yeah, there's the Spider-Man Noir, there was Spider-Gwen, Spider-Pig, yeah,
The big robot one.
the big robot one, yeah, and
Penny.
And then
Yeah,
we
Penny
also
Parker.
got to see Spider-Man
An
2099.
Yeah, the robot was like an arachnoid
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
We got to see Spider-Man 2099 in the Spider-Verse 2 trailer.
Yes.
I remember
And so-
that Spider-Man coming out as a show.
Yeah. When
Okay.
they had
Sorry.
that as the show, and then there was also the versions from the 90s animated. My personal favorite was the Scarlet Spider, and it's one of the more simple costumes, but it's basically just a red jumpsuit all the way down, and he has a blue hoodie with a spider painted on it, and he tore off the sleeves, and
So
it's-
sort of like Peter Parker in the original,
Yes.
or Tobey Maguire in the
yeah, and I
Actually,
think
First Sam Raimi.
it was more like Homecoming.
oh
the-
yeah,
which I haven't seen.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
So
yeah,
the original Tom Holland one, he basically had the Scarlet Spider outfit, but the original outfit had like these
Wait a second, hang on.
wrist bracer things.
Homecoming or
Yeah, Homecoming.
I thought that was the second Tom Holland one.
It's the first Spider-Man one.
Mhm.
The-
Oh, then I have seen that one. My apologies.
Okay.
I have seen Homecoming. I haven't seen the second one with Mysterio.
Yeah, so the first one, the first movie that he was in was Civil War.
yeah.
Okay.
And they briefly showed his makeshift costume that he was using, because but that version of Spider-Man hadn't made his own costume yet,
Right.
and so he was using the like Scarlet Spider-esque suit in the beginning when Tony found him, and then he got the actual suit, so he was able to do a little bit more. And so,
Yeah.
But yeah, the Scarlet Spider is my personal favorite. That's always one I've liked. Spider-Punk is another funny one.
Oh yeah,
It's just like got the like spike mohawk on the top of the mask and,
and a
like,
jean jacket
the
with
jean jacket, and it's
the
like
sleeves
the
cut off.
patches.
so. I mean, there's that's a
Remember
broad
that from
question
the
because there's a
Insomniac
lot.
game, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much all those suits that they have in that game, the Marvel Spider-Man, is pretty much a different version.
Yeah. There's only two.
There's several that are.
There's like two of them that were specific to the game itself, based on different things that were happening within the game. But with the exception of those two, almost all of the other ones were from some sort of Spider-Man storyline, that either comics or TV show or whatever. So
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which some of them were Peter Parker, but then there was a couple of them that were actually different people.
Yes.
So there was like the Miles Morales, but
Right.
then
Or Gwen Stacy.
or
Not
Gwen Stacy wasn't in the games, but I
Yeah.
think they should put her in the second one. That would be awesome.
Yeah, if she's not in the second one, I can see them doing a spinoff with her character because she's becoming more and more popular, especially with the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And so if they didn't introduce her, it would just be a big miss on their like, especially if we look at other superhero games that have introduced other characters, even if they were only briefly playable in like one specific game mode, those characters were really popular and everyone really liked playing as those characters because it was different.
Yeah.
And they've already proven that they can bring in a new version of a character and give them an entirely different combat system, and it works very well. We saw that from going from Spider-Man to Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yeah.
On the new, well, like I guess it was technically an expansion, but it was
it was a standalone. I think is how.
But his combat system, even the way he would swing through the city, was entirely different than that of how Peter did it.
Yeah.
So
because Peter's more experienced and Miles was less experienced, so he's kind of more
he's also
fumbly.
reckless too with the way like. Who swings backwards? Why?
Right. Yeah.
You're asking to get hurt, and Miles Morales is young and indestructible, so he doesn't care.
Right.
So.
It's almost how I imagine Peter almost doing it when he was younger, but in the game he's in his
More mature
20s.
Because at that point he's already been Spider-Man for quite a while, and so he's very experienced. He's very tenured. He's already met the Avengers. I don't know that he's actually done much with the Avengers story-wise in that game universe, but he at least knows of the Avengers and knows who they are and has had conversations. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Stark Tower is one of the, Avengers Tower is one of the main landmarks.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So is Doctor Strange's house.
Yeah, forgot about that. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was going to ask about something. Oh, I was gonna say, should we tell him who Scarlet Spider actually is, though?
I would say go for it. We are well past that threshold of spoiler alerts for that one.
All right. So Scarlet Spider is actually, for those of you who don't know,
so all one of me.
No, I'm saying for the listeners as well, whoever 2 or 3 listeners we get.
And we appreciate both of you.
Yes, of course.
And then next episode, we appreciate all dozen of you.
Hopefully.
Make it happen.
Yeah. So Scarlet Spider is actually a clone of Peter Parker. And his name is actually Ben Parker. And,
that's kind of insulting.
He's from... That version of Spider-Man is from another Earth. And so they did like the Infinite Earth multiverse storyline with the animated series, and that's when they brought in that version of Scarlet Spider within the cartoon and were able to expand that. And so like that's why they had the Spider-Man 2099, because that was another alternate universe. So that they did a great job touching on the multiverse. And then when they brought in that clone of Ben Parker and like the whole Scarlet Spider and that
whole storyline was
that storyline was incredible, and seeing the interaction between him and Peter Parker was just so well done. And it was like, as a 90s cartoon, me as a kid, he's sitting there getting emotional, like, they did it.
Yep. Also, another question. I'm sure you haven't, David, but Caleb, have you ever watched the Unlimited Spider-Man one? The cartoon?
No, the only cartoon I've actually been able to watch was the original 90s.
Okay.
So outside of that one, I unfortunately haven't seen the rest of them.
Okay. Because the Unlimited Spider-Man one was kind of like the 2099 version in a way.
Mm-hmm.
He went to the future and like was trying to take down crime in future New York. Which was very interesting. I didn't love the animation style because it was not very good for its time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was kind of like that crossover of like traditional animation with CGI, almost. But it wasn't even good CGI. It was like, don't remember Reboot?
Yes.
Okay, kind of that Reboot style where you can see they're very clearly trying to make an attempt.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no actual mapping or character development beyond simple shapes.
Yeah, it didn't quite hit that mark that it's like, oh, I love it. No.
And I think the animation is what kind of deterred me from watching a lot of the other cartoons.
Yeah. See, I actually like the newer ones, the ones that are on Disney XD or whatever. that are I actually really like them. Good storyline. They end up going and like Nick Fury ends up recruiting him to be part of the Young Avengers. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool where he
See,
gets
this is
to
starting to
kinda
sound like a
lead them.
Young Justice spinoff. Well, not a spinoff, but a
Yeah.
clone.
It's very similar. So they
Okay.
have like the young Peter Parker. They have White Tiger, which
Okay.
is like a Black Panther esque type of character, but it's a female.
Okay.
They have Power Boy, which is actually
That's-
Luke Cage,
Oh, okay.
but young
Gotcha.
Luke Cage.
Okay. So this is different alternative Earth to
It's-
Defenders, or is this
Well,
like
it's
how does it tie in?
It's obviously not tied in. It's more of its own storyline. It's a cartoon, so it
Okay.
doesn't really.
I think that's part of what honestly confuses me about most of the comics and the expanded universes within them.
Mhm.
Is some of them are just kind of one-offs and others are completely interlaced. Where I mean, you have Deadpool who interlaces with, and yeah, sorry, I know, kind of the cop-out one to go with, but I mean, he kind of he intermingles with everything, but his main things are his own thing or X-Force.
Right.
And the myriad jokes that come from that.
Yeah.
But yet he's also involved with everything else, and perhaps he kind of gets a pass because I mean it's Wade.
Of course.
But with other characters like the X-Men who interact with the event, well, I wouldn't say they interact, but more kind of pitted against the Avengers almost, from my understanding.
At times, yes.
Yeah, I mean they do a lot of interacting with each other, and then there's also that back and forth. It depends on what's going on. Like the Secret Invasion storyline, for example, that they all had to work together. Like it was such a massive force that they were dealing with. If they didn't, there was just no way it was going to work out. But then you also have the Avengers versus X-Men storyline that did pit them against each other, and there was also a little bit of flip-flopping on both sides. Like some were in favor of what the X-Men were fighting for, and then some were in favor of what the Avengers were fighting for. And so
So it was basically the X-Men Avengers Civil War.
Okay.
Which was basically the same exact thing, where it was just like the
So
Avengers were split because they were on two different sides
of a pivotal issue, yeah.
exactly.
Well, I mean, and kind of to bring it back in, so from what I'm gleaning so far of what y'all are saying, it sounds like Peter is kind of always stuck in the middle between the Avengers and the X-Men, where he can really go with either side.
Yeah.
But is that trying to make more of a role for Spider-Man, or am I reading too much into this, or is that kind of the main point behind those?
That's kind of the main point, because if you look at a lot of the comic book storylines, more often than not, Spider-Man is the swing vote. Whether it be a really big decisive battle or just trying to decide a strategy on how to handle a situation, more often than not, Spider-Man is a key player. He always comes in clutch, and he's always one that's like, okay, like I was with them, but they are starting to change. I don't like what they're doing. I'm going to join you guys. And when he flips sides, it's almost an instantaneous thing where it's like you see that side start to do better.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's kind of the he's kind of the chosen one of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, pretty much, because Stan Lee was quite pivotal in his creation. Like he was the one who created him, and like he was the face of Marvel for a long time.
Okay.
So like it doesn't surprise me that he was basically the quote unquote savior of Marvel.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Spider-Man was more for Marvel. What poop.
nice censor there.
To our audience, this is normal for me. Yeah. But so Spider-Man is to Marvel what Superman is for DC, where he's the golden boy, he's the poster child.
Kind of,
more or less. He's
where
not...
I mean, power-wise, you'd think the real comparison would be Captain America, Superman, but again, that might be towing a little too far into the DC versus Marvel.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's more like because Superman and Captain America are more the Boy Scouts of the universes.
They're kind of the ones that everyone looks to in the initial crisis, and everyone just kind of goes by what they say because they're going to lead them well.
Okay, so perhaps I need to kind of scope that statement in a little bit more, where commercially, Spider-Man is for Marvel what Superman is for DC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not storyline wise, but more so
Yeah. Whereas storyline wise, who would y'all? Because I am a bit more familiar with DC and frankly kind of prefer their characters. Yes, sorry, throw your eggs, whatever.
I would argue that he may be more in line with Batman comparison, because while Batman may not necessarily be the first go-to for a big fight because he doesn't have the same powers that others in DC has, he's going to be the one that has the plan that is going to work. He's already going to have thought 12 steps ahead. He's going to be able to jump into a situation that he may not necessarily be able to handle, but he's going to be able to think his way through it. And that's kind of a similar thing that we see with Spider-Man a lot throughout the comics. I keep referencing the Avengers versus X-Men, but Spider-Man played such a key role in that, where when he changed sides, he got into a situation where he was fighting against both Colossus and Colossus's sister Magic. And
sorry, Dan just pulled out that exact graphic novel.
The entire story right in my hands.
He was fighting against both Colossus and Magic, who both had a piece of the Phoenix Force within them.
Oof.
And so, like, one of them by themselves was a serious problem, especially at this point, storyline-wise. Colossus not only had his normal powers, but he gained the powers of the Juggernaut as well. And so he had Colossus, Juggernaut, and now a part of the Phoenix Force. And then Magic is basically female Doctor Strange. She can access that realm that Doctor Strange has, but she has a greater control of that realm than Doctor Strange does. Ooh. And so Spider-Man was fighting both of them with a part of the Phoenix Force in each of them, and he managed to win the fight. And he also nearly sacrificed himself doing so, caused a cave-in and said, no, you guys get out of here. I've got this. And he took care of it. He won the fight, and they busted back in, rescued him, and then took the unconscious enemies away.
So from what you just described, it sounds, and just want to point on it, it's funny you tie him to, sorry, I just want to close that loop real fast. It's funny you tied him to, or you made the comparison to Batman, because I was actually going to say, it sounds like he's more like, not Damian.
One of the Robins?
Dick Grayson, Nightwing.
The only reason I didn't make the Dick Grayson comparison is because he doesn't have some of those same integral moments that Spider-Man does. And I will admit that I'm not as knowledgeable on Dick Grayson as I am Marvel characters, so I may be misspeaking here. But based on just the storylines, Dick Grayson didn't quite have that same peak that Spider-Man had. He also didn't carry the franchise, and he wasn't turned to as being the leader. And so many different arcs, whether it be Secret Avengers, X-Men versus Avengers, whether it be the Dark Avengers storyline after the Secret Invasion, whatever the situation is, Spider-Man is always there.
Gotcha.
Whereas Dick Grayson kind of comes and goes.
Right.
But Spider-Man, if it's involving the Marvel Universe, it's a very good chance that Spider-Man's going to at least show up for a part of it.
And not only that, too, but Spider-Man, overall, his moral code.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed that I appreciate from the different film iterations we've seen of him so far. It's very much the same background to the character.
Yeah.
And I mean that more in just the how many times can we watch Uncle Ben die, but more in the sense of, like, no, the character's always going to have the same principles going forward.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. It had to be said one time this
Yes, it did. And I mean,
kind of disappointed it took this long, honestly.
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean,
it took us that long to get to the moral code part of it.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. But and I just completely lost my train of thought.
So you were saying that it's like that's basically his coat of arms of
right. Okay.
Like, that's his character. Whereas Nightwing, he's a bit more questionable.
He's a bit more of a maverick.
Yeah. He's more of a vigilante, more of a.
I mean, by the textbook definition, aren't they all?
Well, yes. Okay, so there is a difference because Spider-Man is a vigilante. However, he's more considered a superhero.
Okay, so
there's a difference between superhero and vigilante.
Okay, so since we're getting on that splitting hair.
Yeah.
Where does that fit in with the dichotomy of a hero versus an anti-hero?
Because an anti-hero can toe the line.
Yeah.
An anti-hero will be... Oh, go ahead, Caleb.
If we look at like the comparison with Venom, for example, Venom would fall in more of an anti-hero line where he's technically doing the right thing. He's helping people, but he doesn't care who he has to kill to get there.
Right.
And so he's willing to eat, stomp, and crush his way through whatever he has to. A Punisher is another great example. Yeah.
Yep.
And so like they're willing to do basically whatever they have to do to kind of get their point across. And their point may not always be the right point. Whereas Spider-Man is always that great
Moral
power,
compass.
great responsibility, back to the moral compass. He's always trying to think of who can I save? How can I help? Who can I help? When can I help? He's always looking to do the best he can and help the most people. Whereas the anti-hero, if they help someone, okay, cool. That's not the goal.
Yeah. It's more, how can I feel better about myself and my storyline? And
Gotcha.
yeah. I was gonna say also that again, Spider-Man's moral code was more of a, also added to what you were saying, is he tries not to kill, just like Batman, where it's like that's his, like, if I can help it, I'm gonna subdue rather than kill.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, now I'm just thinking of one of the other memes where it's Spider-Man starts off with Spider-Man explaining, "I'm not gonna kill. I'm not even gonna touch a gun." Batman says, "Agreed, can't kill. If I remove one murder off the street, then all I've done is add another. I've kept the balance."
Yeah.
And then it shows Punisher. Why stop at one?
Right. This is not what we believe. Disclaimer. So moving on to not Far From Home, No Way Home. What do you guys think?
Man, I'm excited. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of rumor going around as to what we're gonna see. I have done my best to stay spoiler free. I have been successful so far. Even unfollowed some YouTube channels because of spoilers in their thumbnails. So,
Oh no!
so it's like I've been very intentional not to follow the spoilers. So like I know nothing going into it. I just know pure speculation. Some of the things I want to see, especially after the Let There Be Carnage end credit scene, which I will touch on that. So if you haven't seen it, mute, skip ahead, whatever you got to do. But after seeing the scene with the end credit scene with Venom being brought into that realm, that universe, and seeing his interaction and his response to seeing Peter Parker on TV, I'm wanting to see how that plays out. I don't think we're going to see that in No Way Home, because I think we've already got a lot that's going on in that one with the number of villains they're bringing in and like the potential of us seeing multiple Spider-Men in this movie. If they bring in Venom on top of that, that is so much.
Yeah.
And so I think that we'll see something with those two later. They did recently announce that Tom Holland signed I think it was a 3-movie deal with Sony. And so we would most likely see quite a bit of connection there between those two. But based on this one, honestly, like I'm excited to see what they do. It seems like they're going the Sinister Six route from the comics. And so we're seeing some of those key interval characters brought in. How it all plays out, and if we see all of them fighting at once and like 3 Spider-Men against 5 villains that they've announced so far, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, because
But that's also assuming that the other two cinematic Spider-Man are in there.
yeah, that's all dependent that those other 2 are there, which
Here's hoping.
based on something I saw in a trailer, I think it's pretty likely.
You talking about the lizard punch?
Yes.
Yes. So
And
in the trailer, there's a moment where you see the villains and Spider-Man converging to the center of the screen, and then you
it's
see
Electro, Sandman, and Lizard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see Lizard coming, and then all of a sudden his face turns like he got punched, but no one's there.
And he's also jumping much lower than where Spider-Man is. So like Spider-Man's pretty on par with Electro, and Sandman's a little bit higher, and then Lizard's below. And so based on the way it looks, and Lizard's going for a swing. And based on the angle and his trajectory, he was not going to hit Spider-Man. And so like there's speculation that may have been like a big moment from the movie, and they just edited out the other Spider-Man from that scene for the trailer,
like they did in Civil War, where they took Spider-Man out.
In which case, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna throw this bone out now. I think if they waited to do another iteration of Spider-Man to try to make this multiverse happen in the live-action MCU, it never would have been as big of a surprise because we all know Tom Holland cannot keep a secret to save his life.
Right.
We love him. He's a great actor.
I watched an interview about that actually, and he's been very careful about not releasing any spoilers. He's gotten to the point where he starts reading the script the day of recording because he knows he's going to spoil something. And he does not do solo interviews anymore when it's talking specifically about movies that he's in currently.
Okay.
And so, like, the only solo interview he's done recently since finishing filming for No Way Home was Hot Ones, and they did not talk about Spider-Man very much at all in that interview. So he's been very careful and started just basically procrastinating the heck out of it just to make sure he doesn't spoil it.
In which case, on the off chance that anyone related to Tom Holland, be it professionally or otherwise, we love you, boy.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think he even put out a something in an interview or something that he was like, "Yeah, don't give spoilers. Like, we will, like, come after you." Like, obviously joking, but like,
there's like so many YouTube compilations of it's just like Tom Holland spoiling Avengers for 5 minutes.
yeah, yep.
So it's like he's been very careful about it, which I respect. I don't want the spoilers. So.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the meme of where it says "Don't spoil Spider-Man or you'll go and meet Uncle Ben"?
Ooh.
or Stan Lee. I think the best one was Stan Lee. You'll meet Stan
That
Lee.
makes sense. I was about to ask which
Ooh.
version of Uncle Ben, but
Yeah.
Actually, come to think of it, they didn't show an Uncle Ben.
There's
for
no Uncle Ben
Tom Holland.
for Tom
he
Holland
had
at the
already
moment.
started off as a Spider-Man, and look, granted, he is still very new into the Spider-Man, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that because
Yeah.
we'd
And-
already, like you said, how many times can we see Uncle Ben die before we get the point? Like we only needed to see it one time, and we already had the point. They didn't need to do it a second time, but they did.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like so much about these movies is like they're not rehashing. They're just like, no, this doesn't make sense. You're smart. You already know what happens. Here you go.
Yeah. And on that note, and I just kind of want to ask, were there redeemable parts of the original Spider-Man movies?
Oh
to y'all.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, they're enjoyable films. Period.
Yeah.
And I personally, yeah, this is gonna sound like a weird way to split hairs. I think that Tobey Maguire was a better Spider-Man, but
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield was a better Peter Parker.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I think they both have their pros and cons.
Mhm.
Honestly, all three of them do. I think that Tobey Maguire, like you said, I think he was a good Spider-Man in and of himself. But as a Peter Parker, he just seemed too old
Mhm.
and too
Yeah.
too like he was nerdy.
He was almost too
But-
cocky.
Well, he was definitely cocky in Spider-Man 3.
That's we can blame the symbiote on that one.
Right, yeah. Quote unquote. But yeah, no, like oh my goodness. There's so many good things about
Yeah. Well,
like,
it's
Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
Doc
the
Ock
original-
was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's a reason
Amazing.
why
Heck yeah.
fans were
Mulligan is
so
awesome.
excited that he is coming back for
Yeah.
this movie because he was such a fantastic choice for the character and he did such a good job with it. He just fits. He
Yeah.
makes it work.
Yeah.
And that's like what I would argue what the original trilogy did really well for the most part was the casting.
Mhm.
There's a few casting choices here and there that I was like, yeah, I don't see it.
Venom.
yeah.
Topher Grace was
That
terrible.
version of Venom altogether is just not my favorite.
Yeah,
But, like,
Grace is a great actor, but just as Eddie, no.
Yeah.
It's
no.
like,
no.
but when we look at like Norman Osborn, Mary Jane, and Doc Ock, like those three characters were just done so
Oh, yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm so glad they're bringing Willem Dafoe back for Green Goblin.
Yes, like Willem Dafoe is one of those actors that, for me at least, that it's kind of hit or miss depending on the movie and like
Right.
what kind of character he's doing. But Goblin Willem Dafoe, I can't not vote for him. He's just
he
too
was a
good
hit
at
for that one.
Oh, for sure.
See, I'm different with Willem Dafoe. I think anything I see him in, he does a fantastic job.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to see him sometimes as that role until you see him in action as the role, if that makes sense.
So-
when you hear, oh, Willem Dafoe's in that? What? Why? And then you see it and you're like, no, Oh wow,
So
that worked.
I guess let me clarify it a little bit. It's not that I don't think he does well with the role. He does good with everything he does. There's just certain characters that he's played that I don't care for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's not so much that he doesn't do a good job or that I don't think he's a good fit for a character. There's just some characters that don't hit the mark for me personally.
Okay.
Whereas he always does a great job.
Boondock Saints.
Yes. His character in Boondock Saints is like, while I understand what they're going for and I appreciate the work he did, that was not one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I will say in that case, and I know this is off topic, but the firefight comment, I don't know if it was direction, if it was what the heck do I do with this line, or just the script in general, but that scene almost kills the movie.
Yeah.
We apologize for the little furry boofer outside the door if you heard that.
I was just about to
But
say,
we
I think
love
we
the furry boofer.
switched who the noob was in this character this episode. I've never seen Boondock
Just diving
Saints.
into the Willem Dafoe stuff. We'll bring that rabbit hole back.
We'll have to do an after dark version to cover Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we go Willem Dafoe, that's
And there's
gonna
only
be
one of
very
those,
interesting.
thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that I think that was like something that the original trilogy did really well was the casting. The Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, I think they had very good actors in them.
Oh,
I don't know if all of the actors were necessarily like the best choice for the character per se.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that they didn't do a good job. It's just it was kind of like what you said with Willem Dafoe. Is like, wait, he's in that, she's in that, she's doing that character.
Yeah. Who didn't you particularly care for in that?
The
role?
casting choice for Rhino was I was a little surprised by
Yeah.
initially. Like he's a great actor,
I don't
and I
remember who
enjoy
played
the
him.
stuff that he does.
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But he's a great actor, and I always
Yeah,
enjoy
that is
him
a
when I
weird
see
fit.
him and stuff. But when I saw him, I was like, "That's Rhino.
Yeah.
That's not at all who
It-
I would have expected for
It
Rhino."
felt like a very afterthought kind of thing
Yes.
for those movies because he wasn't even in it for that long.
Yeah,
It was just like, oh, it's here and then gone.
Yeah, it was like 10 seconds in the first one, and then like first 10 minutes of the second one.
Well, no, in the second one, he was in it for the first scene,
Yeah.
and then it was at the end of the second one he actually became Rhino.
Oh, okay.
So it was the same movie. It was just
Okay. Then.
beginning and end.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
but like Andrew Garfield was great.
Emma Stone was amazing.
Emma Stone was amazing.
Granted, she's great in everything she's done. Like there hasn't been a movie that I've seen her in that I'm just like, oh, she wasn't very good in that. She always kills it.
Yep.
It's
I
like,
just
again,
love
like-
her quirkiness.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? But again, Paul Giamatti, great actor.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that casting choice for that character.
Very much so.
Yep.
I kind of hope that they recast if they ever do Rhino again.
I'm not
Yeah.
opposed to giving him another chance, especially since we're going the multiverse route. Unless they just choose to use this versus version of Rhino, and that would make sense that they would bring in a different actor for that character at that point. But
Honestly, when I picture like a cinematic version of Rhino, my first thought is more of the guy that they cast in was it X2 or X3 with Juggernaut? Because that's the guy I picture playing Rhino.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the characters are so similar that might be part of the reason why.
It's possible, yeah.
yeah, and especially since they're already leaning into the multiverse with like the X-Men characters and using that to bring them in, I don't know that they could technically get away with bringing him in to play another character. But I mean,
They're bringing the X-Men into the multiverse? Does that mean we get to see Hugh Jackman again?
They've
doubt
been
it.
dancing around that one a
They've
bit.
been dancing around that one. Like I think if we see anything with Hugh Jackman, it's going to be another Deadpool movie. But
Yeah. Or
Which they've
the
already
first
confirmed
class
they're-
cameo.
Yes. Yes.
just
Which
that
was
one line.
fantastic.
Yes.
Oh.
We won't say the line on here, but it was pretty fantastic. It was another F word, but
I will
look,
say,
friends.
I feel like the movies with Tom Holland have gotten the best things from the other two series and taking them into account. But
Yes.
the casting, the storytelling, the angles, and like just the cinematics that we get now versus what we got back then. I saw in the interview on the Hot Ones with Tom Holland where he was talking about, they asked him what it was like getting to record with, forgive me, what was the name of the actor for Duck Ock?
Oh,
Albert Molina.
Albert Molina.
Albert
yeah.
Molina. They were asking him what he felt like coming back and playing this role that he hasn't played in so long. And he was surprised because it was such a different thing. In the originals, when he was Doc Ock, they had puppeteers handling the arms.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so when he came in and it was all digital and he was basically just strapped to this apparatus and it was moving around and they had all the visual effects for the arms, it was such a weird contrast and difference to him. So
Sorry, Alfred Molina.
Alfred,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And so that was like one of the things that really stuck out to me from that interview.
Yeah.
It was just talking about going from puppeteering to the actual like special effects and the big apparatus moving around,
Yeah.
all Palpatine style.
And this may be showing a bit more of my hand on that one. I personally, the reliance on CGI is kind of jarring for me. Like I really like the practical effects.
I do too. I think at least what we've seen in the trailers so far, the special effects for the arms looks great.
Oh,
Yes.
don't get me wrong. It looks fantastic. I'm not trying to bash the product. It's just, to me personally, there's always going to be that spark missing from, hang on, that's actually in that world.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm not as opposed to it on this one is having gone through the seeing Doc Ock in the Spider-Man game, and that was definitely not practical effects.
Well, one game.
Yeah.
They do a lot
The-
of
the
mocap.
rubber.
Come on now. Don't act
They
like
do
they don't
mocap, yes,
mocap
but that
and
doesn't
stuff.
mean that they actually try to put in real elements.
Yeah.
Not that you know.
That
of.
was the one thing I hated about Spider-Man 2 itself was Doc Ock on the train. Just how rubbery he looked.
Mhm.
That was the only thing. Other than that,
I'll grant you that.
great
I'll grant you
movie.
that.
But if we look at like how far the visual effects have come, like look at, for example, at the various Hulk movies we've had and the various iterations of
yeah.
Hulk
We've
that
had one
seen.
good Hulk movie, and then we had a great adaptation of Hulk in an ensemble.
Yes.
Yeah, and just look at how the visual effects for Hulk look.
And we also had a 2-hour-long acid trip.
It's like the visual of Hulk has improved so much over time.
Yeah.
And it's like just looking at that, and that's why I'm not as hesitant with the special effects and everything for the arms, because I'm going to give them a chance. Marvel typically does really well with the special effects. And
I was about to say like that Marvel and Spider-Man itself seems to do a very good balance of special effects and practical effects.
True.
It seems to be, anyway, to me.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that. There's a lot of actual stunt work going in.
Yeah, especially
Which-
Tom Holland
Oh, yeah.
with his gymnastics background and everything, just being able to actually do the flips and stuff, and actually being the stunt man.
Yeah.
For some of it, at least. Like that just amazes me so much.
Yeah. And okay, here's another area where I have to give hats off to credit where it's due. Hats off to the Marvel writers on this one, which yeah, you know how big of a praise that is coming from me. The fact that they're showing off in very sincere ways throughout the MCU that no, he may actually be the smartest of all of them.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, he's going up against Tony Stark, who is kind of definitively the smartest person in the MCU up until Peter being introduced.
Mm-hmm.
the only competition potentially being Reed Richards.
Well, he hasn't been in the MCU yet, though. I would say right now the only rival he has right now besides Spider-Man is Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Strange or Nim.
Who?
Nim. Is it Nim?
Pym.
Pym. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Thinking back to childhood and thinking of a different series entirely.
Yeah. Not The Secret of Nim.
Dang it.
But yeah, no, Ant-Man. The
yeah.
original Ant-Man.
Yes, the original Ant-Man.
Yes.
But I mean, I gotta give hats off to the Marvel writers where they're kind of throwing in these tidbits like, oh no, keep your eye on this kid.
Yeah.
Because keep your eye. He's growing.
I was gonna say, and I think that's the thing that they're slightly missing, even though they showed a little bit of it in, I think it was Homecoming, where he was making his web fluid and stuff like that, is that he's not doing as much of the sciencey stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they bring a little bit more of that in, where like he knows what's going on, like with the multiverse, and like actually no, he did do a little bit of that in Far From Home, where he was like he was talking about the multiverse and very intelligently,
Mm-hmm.
and like Oh, and David, you'll have to watch these because if you're gonna watch No Way Home, you have to watch these other two.
I may do that. May watch No Way Home and then go back and watch it and not tell you.
I would highly recommend watching Homecoming at least because Keaton as Vulture was so good.
Yeah.
It was one of those casting choices I was initially like, I don't know about this, but as you started seeing Michael Keaton playing the character, I was like, oh, he knows his character. He gets it. He's killing it in this character.
It's kind of like when you first go to watch it, you're like, why is Batman and Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I was about to
and
make
then you're
some
like,
sort of
wait.
joke of rubbernecking.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Like, then you watch Batman and then you're like, why is Vulture playing Batman?
And that's the closest to the smarts that we've really been able to see with Spider-Man so far was in Homecoming when he's like locked in the room and he's just like, well, I guess I'll just test out the features of my suit and see what happens.
Yeah,
and he learns how to operate his suit overnight. And he had all the advanced mechanics in it from Tony and hadn't really had any experience with any of that stuff up to that point. And so like that's the closest to that intelligent Peter Parker we've seen from the Tom Holland version of the character so far. And I agree. I would like to see more of that science aspect.
I beg to differ, and I'm shocked that I caught this and y'all didn't.
What's that?
Go back and watch Civil War. Go back and watch Civil War, and he's making all these comments to everyone, including Falcon, like, oh, here's how your suit works, blah, 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 blah. And it just goes through this long string of technobabble, and apparently it had the right effect because y'all have the same response as Falcon. But he's just kind of brushing it off, like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to watch those again and see that.
I do remember that. It didn't quite stick out to me because it was just comments and passing, I guess, and we didn't really get to see him sit down and really do that interaction, whereas, like, with the Andrew Garfield version, for example, he, as a high school student, was working in a lab with the doctor before he turned into Lizard. And so, like, that was, like, the real level. Whereas Tom Holland's Spider-Man didn't really get to see that same intelligence, I guess.
Yeah, where you were able to see the we're having
awkward pauses this
we're having technical difficulties.
First try.
What was I gonna say now?
We're talking about the intelligence stuff with Spider-Man,
like how they're showing it off.
Right. How he ended up figuring out that
His
equation
overnight. Oh yeah, that's right.
From the Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That definitely.
He was able to make because the doctor was stuck on that equation trying to figure out how to regrow the limb, and like Peter Parker walked in and was like, "Oh, here's your answer." And so it's like, well, obviously things didn't quite go according to plan.
Of course,
we did get to see that he just walked in.
He
looked at the equation.
Answer.
Yeah, he walked in, saw the equation, and was like, "Oh yeah, this is what you do."
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that they're not making him some absolute boy wonder.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to other comic book boy wonder, but they're not making him this absolute I know everything Maltese Falcon type character. It's more of this, oh hey, and it's kind of this savantism, as opposed to this kind of insufferable know-it-all.
Yeah. And that was another great thing about Spider-Man growing up is that, and that's the way Stan Lee made him, was he was a very relatable character.
Mm-hmm.
He was very smart, but he had his flaws.
Yeah.
And he had his his things that he had to work through as a teenager. And hormones and girls and things like that. Where
all I can think of is Smallville now.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess something that I hadn't really thought about until we started discussing this, we haven't seen that high school student side of this version of Peter Parker nearly as much as we did in the previous movies. Because we saw them going to school, we saw them doing the tests, we saw them dealing with that normal high school life. Outside of the homecoming situation and the actual dance, we don't see the high school side of things for this version of Peter Parker very much. And so that could be where we're not seeing some of that same intelligence. It's like we haven't seen him just like zip through a test and like, easy noobs, let's do this.
Yeah. Other than the fact that he kept saying that he was so far beyond high school, like he kind of alluded to the fact that it was all easy. In one of the was it Homecoming that he said that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a good thing, because if he was that far ahead, then the snapping didn't really hurt him very much.
Right, exactly. I'm 5 years older, but not really. But yeah, I am. He probably could have been in college courses way earlier. But
Yeah. Well, that would be true to the Peter Parker story.
yeah,
He was always advanced, and he was always ahead of everyone else in school.
yeah.
So, kind of back to the questions from the noob side of the house. Because of how I grew up around comics, I have family members who, to this day, still hold that the only Spider-Man, or the only version of that storyline, is the one told in Sunday mornings.
Mhm.
How does that tie in, or does it at all?
Not that I know of. No.
Yeah.
It's,
I know originally they would put the actual storylines in the newspaper to get people interested. It's like, oh, like I want to see what happens next. Where
Okay,
does
so
this lead?
it was basically
And so-
it was a teaser for the actual
Yes.
comic.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty
Oh, yeah.
much.
Yeah, that's true.
That was when they were first getting started, and that was really when Marvel was still dealing with a lot of their issues and trying to get off the ground, and DC was just way ahead of them at the time.
They've been around longer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so Marvel was really trying to like play catch up, basically at that point. Now, not so much.
Yeah,
they've steered pretty clear. And granted, like there's so many versions of Spider-Man being printed and released right now. Anyway, like they'd need like 5 different papers just to try and keep up with all of the different storylines.
Are they still doing Spider-Man in the?
I've not
newspapers?
touched a physical paper in I
Okay.
don't know how long.
All right. I was just curious if someone you knew that, or
to my
whatever,
knowledge,
but-
no.
okay. I figured as much, but
Yeah.
I know they still have some old ones going, so wasn't sure.
Yeah. Like the ones I remember reading were more, I mean, frankly, they were more like a soap opera with superhero abilities, and they were,
That's pretty.
to put
spot
it
on with a lot of the
succinctly,
early days.
bad.
it was Spider-Man Noir, pretty much.
See, so after,
Don't knock the Nick Cage Spider.
Oh,
I-
no.
okay,
That was-
okay, hang on. I will say this: after watching the first Into the Spider-Verse, I actually did go back and read one of the noir storylines. I loved it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it wasn't soap opera-y. It honestly did have those same story
Yeah.
beats of a classic noir novella.
Mhm.
It just had graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to them putting that in one of the games as well.
I would love to see that in a game, and just like either the noir suit or even being able to have like a noir mode, because they did something like
The
that.
noir suit
with
was in there.
they did the Into the Spider-Verse suit. It was sort of not the exact same. It was a different
Okay.
version. It was more similar to that of like the Tom Holland noir suit, where it was just a black suit with goggles, and not like the true.
Okay,
noir.
yeah.
It was more of a steampunky type
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they did something similar to that in the Miles Morales game, where you could put on the Into the Spider-Verse suit, and it had the Into the Spider-Verse effects when you're swinging around while wearing that
Oh,
suit.
nice. Okay.
I was actually going to mention that earlier too, but for some reason I thought we said something, but I guess not.
So many rabbit trails.
And that's what this show is all about.
We're gonna talk about trapping next.
Now, do you have any other questions for us, David?
Nothing else really is coming to mind. Because I mean, y'all sort of initially it was kind of goat roping it. Because I mean, for those of you listening at home, stubborn is one of the many words that could be used to describe me. It's one of the few that's flattering ish. But you don't have to agree so quickly there, Caleb.
It was like instantaneous agreement on that one.
Oh, but
I think I was nodding my head before you started talking.
yeah. But I mean, you guys have gotten me into some more of the Marvel movies, whatnot. And now that I'm kind of getting away from writing reviews and doing all that, past life, don't ask, of writing reviews and whatnot, I'm starting to realize like, no, there is enjoyment past the functional art or the exact story points, whatever. Now, horror, I'll beg to differ, but I don't think either of y'all are really into that genre to begin with. So
Yeah, it would end up being one geek and 2 noobs on that episode.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Well, actually, that does kind of bring up another question. How do y'all feel about the rumors of, and it's tangential, so if it's too out of line, cut me off. But how do y'all feel about the rumors of Multiverse of Madness being more of a horror movie?
I'm actually okay with that, honestly, because of kind of the way they're going with some of the other movies, like Morbius, which
Well, that's still more
that
of
one
a
looked pretty awesome.
that's still more the Sony Columbia TriStar.
Yes, yeah, it's still
universe.
yeah, but it's still a part of the same technical universe.
Oh, okay.
Like it's not MCU, but it's part of the Spider-Man universe.
Well, yeah,
kind of
because
like
I
the
guess
way that-
after the Venom end credit scene,
Yes.
then okay.
Exactly.
because Carnage and Venom and
The symbiote.
Morbius are both in the same universe.
Right.
I don't know if you saw the trailer for it.
I did.
Okay, where he says the thing about I'm Venom, and then he's like, I'm just kidding.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that's. I'm actually pretty okay with the idea of them doing a bit more of a scary kind of thing because it's
I think it
the
works.
genre. It's not the genre. It's the storyline.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it works, especially with the right characters. Like the
Yes.
Morbius character, like you pointed out, that's really a perfect character to kind of play in that water. And that's something that they can test out to see, okay, how do the fans react to this? Is this something we can potentially do more of?
Yeah.
And if they wanted to do that, it's like, if this goes over well and it actually does well within theaters and with audiences, then what's to stop them from doing another dark, gritty Punisher movie or
Right.
something like that?
Yeah.
So it really opens the door, I think. And I feel like they're most likely using this as a testing ground to
Yeah.
see how the fans react and see, is this something that people want to see?
Well,
Gotcha. So,
even-
in other words, y'all are thinking that the Sony Marvel movies are becoming more of the staging environment to see what they can get away with.
No,
mainstream
I
MCU.
think. Well, I think that it's a test for Sony, and Marvel may take note, especially since they are partnered together right now. So I think, well, that's what we're gonna see is Sony testing the waters, see what they can get away with, and just kind of going from there. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and if you guys have watched, What If, I don't know if,
Nope.
okay, so David hasn't. Okay, neither of you have, but they did delve into a little bit more of the scary line of Doctor Strange, where I think they were kind of gonna pull from in Multiverse of Madness.
Okay.
So like he kind of like there's two different versions of Doctor Strange in this one episode, and one of them kind of goes nuts. So
Ooh.
yeah, if when you get a chance, watch it because it is pretty crazy.
Okay.
And if you are liking the idea of horror in the Doctor Strange movie, then this will kind of
I wouldn't say I'm liking it, but I'm cautiously optimistic
Yeah.
of it because horror is a very misunderstood genre.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think, oh, horror is Freddy Krueger, and to an extent, Freddy Krueger is horror, but he's more slasher, more thriller.
Yeah.
And it's related, but it's not horror. Horror is Event Horizon or The Thing.
Yeah.
It's this idea, or the original Romero movies, where it's trying to thematically put a dark mirror against society, saying, okay, those things you don't want to talk about, hey, let's address those.
Yeah.
Or Poltergeist for the more lighthearted fare.
Mm-hmm. Which again, if Doctor Strange kind of goes in that direction, again, I don't think I'll mind it because it is the storyline. It like Doctor Strange's storylines have always been very creepy, very like delving into the dark worlds. So like,
So it's kind of the supernatural of the MCU.
exactly,
Yeah.
Okay.
that it literally is that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I feel like
Jensen, Jared, please get your people on that. We want to see y'all again.
please crossover with Supernatural, fantastic. I mean,
Honestly, if there's going to be any sort of a cinematic comic universe crossover with Supernatural, it's going to be DC. Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, you're probably right.
Although I think I heard that one of them is actually going to be in the MCU.
oh, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I forget who they're going to be. But
I'm hoping it's Jared just because we've seen Jensen as DC characters before. And actually, we haven't seen Jared, but we've heard Jared as. Anyway, I'm getting us on a weird tangent here.
It's the Batman line. You either die a DC villain or you live to become a.
That's not Batman. It's from the
It's the
Batman
line.
universe.
It's
but
the line
I
from.
feel like the actual line at this point is you either die a Lord of the Rings elf or live long enough to see yourself become a Marvel
That's what
villain.
it is. Yep. That's what it is. I knew it was one of those series.
So we've got like what 4 people that played an elf in Lord of the Rings and has become a villain at this point.
Yep. Yeah, because we got
We got Ronan the Accuser. We've got Hela. We've got Red Skull. I feel like there's another one that I'm not thinking of.
yeah. I can't think of it at the moment.
This is like Red Skull was also Elrond.
Yep.
Hela was
Galadriel.
Gladriel.
Yep.
And then Ronan, shoot, who was
He was Legolas's dad.
Legolas's dad. That's
Yeah.
right.
Thranduil.
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 Yeah.
Yep.
I'm surprised.
So
I
there's
remembered
at
that one.
least 3 that were. So wait. Okay, now question for you guys: what
no.
villain is Orlando Bloom gonna play?
I do not know Marvel well enough to convincingly answer that.
Yeah.
I could actually no. I could see him as Bullseye.
Ooh.
That would actually make sense. That would actually make
That
a lot
It
of
would.
sense.
would
It
make
might
a
be a
lot of
little
sense.
too on the nose.
I think it would work though, because like
So long as they
Actually-
don't do the whole birthmark weird scar thing on his forehead.
The only time I personally know of that he played a villain was in the Three Musketeers movie that came out a number of years ago, and like he was an enjoyable villain in that character, a little
Yeah.
odd, but an enjoyable villain.
Again, in true Orlando Bloom fashion, a little overacting. But
That's fair. That's fair. But so like
Not
actually
Nick Cage levels of overacting.
no.
playing Bullseye would actually make a lot of sense. I like that.
It would be
idea,
awesome.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Might be a little on the nose. And it's basically the same character traits, just different universe.
I'm okay
Well,
with it.
He's also very much like a Hawkeye character, though. Like,
True.
because they're both the can't miss kind of things.
Yeah.
So, I think Bullseye is a little bit more of the enhanced type, though, isn't he? Like he actually has a somewhat of a superpower that he can't miss.
Yeah.
Whereas Hawkeye is just
That proficient.
very well trained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like extremely well trained.
Yeah.
So we got off on a bit of a tangent, but I'll route back to your earlier question of what we're hoping to see with this new movie. And you didn't get to answer that question, so I'm curious
Yeah,
to see
my
what
bad,
you
Dan.
think of on that one, Dan.
I mean, definitely. I'm really hoping to see the other 2 Spider-Men. Those are definitely the main things I want to see. I'm honestly not sure. I've kind of been keeping my expectations to a minimum because I just want to be surprised by it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best way to go into it, especially with a movie that's got the level of hype that this one has.
yeah.
To go into it with any more expectations than just entertain me and surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
You're almost doing yourself a disservice because we don't know what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
so if you go in predicting A, B, and C to happen, and then something else entirely happens, it's like, oh, crap, I was wrong. But I wanted to see that. Like, this was good, but I wanted to see that.
Yeah. Disappointment.
Disappointment.
Yeah, but that kind of goes back to the whole multiverse idea because then, especially with Spider-Man, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because, again, not that big of a Marvel fan.
You will be. You will be. I'm not, sorry.
But I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Spider-Man is kind of where the idea of the multiverse started with Marvel, isn't it?
I don't know that that's where it started. I know that at least visually within the animated and cinematic universe, that's where it started in Marvel. I'm not sure where that one started in the comics. I feel like that was more likely to do something with either Scarlet Witch or Doctor Strange because they're the ones that pretty much always start it.
Gotcha.
Based on what I know.
Yeah, because a lot of times it was Scarlet Witch during the what was it? The Age of X or
I think so. There was also the House of M.
House of M. That's
storyline.
what it was.
Yeah.
The House of M storyline where she created a world without mutants,
Yeah.
and then
And she just
Or
got
very
angry
few
and
mutants.
basically said no more mutants, and it brought the mutant population down to just a fraction of what it was.
And
Wow.
then didn't that lead also into Age of Apocalypse? Or
I think there is a tie into that, but that actually is where the connection to Avengers versus X-Men comes
That's
in.
right. That's
Yeah.
Because at that point, when the Phoenix Force was coming back to Earth, the X-Men were like, we are on the brink of extinction. We need the Phoenix Force to survive. And Captain America very uncharacteristically says, we should kill it.
Ooh,
Mm.
Yeah.
that's kind of 180 from his stance in Civil
Yeah.
War.
Because yeah, exactly.
Very much
Well, and the
so.
whole reason was because of some situations, which I don't remember the exact storyline, but what he witnessed happen with Jean Grey and Dark Phoenix. Because when she lost power or lost control, that caused a lot of damage, took a lot of lives. And so he was basically just at the point where he was like, if the Phoenix ever comes back, I will kill it myself if I have to.
Gotcha. So he basically viewed the Phoenix Force as another hero, another Fat Man or Little Boy.
Basically.
Gotcha.
Well, guys, I think this has been a very successful episode.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to talk about next week or next time?
There's a number of topics, and we can go any direction. We can continue with the Marvel stuff because I think by the time that we get to talk next time, we may have been able to see Spider-Man, at least some of us.
Fair.
So that may not be a bad option. There's always so many good topics, especially with everything out today. Like, we could continue the Spider-Man and just go into a little bit of the spoilers. Warning on that one if we do get there.
Yes.
Or we can take a break if we want to. But talking about Spider-Man when it's still fresh on our mind may be the best option.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with the new movie coming out, it would definitely be something where we can prefix it and then do a nice little recap. So,
All right. I'd be down.
yeah. All
Yep.
right. Cool.
And yes, that is me in a weird way sidestepping the issue of y'all actually agreeing to go see it. So yes, I will go see it.
Awesome. I know my family and I are going to see it on Christmas Day. So
Not surprised.
I will be seeing it this coming Saturday, which is just 2 days away for those of you listening. So,
ooh boy.
Nice.
No
2 days
spoilers.
away at time of recording, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was gonna say that is something that we will definitely have to say on every episode. Is we're recording this at this point, but
Only if we're giving relative time frames.
yeah, exactly. So this is 2 days before. Oh, actually, no, it came out today. That's right.
Mhm.
Yep.
So Spider-Man: No Way Home came out today, and that's where we'll leave this episode. As long as everybody else is good.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you have a great day.
Yep. Take care.
Goodbye. Goodbye.